In this tutorial, I'm going to go over how to complete the Apple assignment, where we convert the image to the graphic. So, to start, we are going to use this photograph of an apple. So when I click this, I should download an apple. And it's going to go, for me, it's going to go to my downloads folder, which is where it'll go to for a Mac. And it will probably open up in a program that is not Photoshop. So we need to open this in Photoshop. But we do see that it is called Apple Assignment Image.png. So we can simply move over to Photoshop, and instead of create a new document, we can choose to open a document. And we can go to my Downloads folder, find the Apple Assignment Image, and click Open. That's what I would do. So we now have our image open, and we're primarily going to use the Quick Select tool to select parts of this image and then fill them in with solid colors. So the Quick Select tool is the fourth tool down. If you don't see it, it might be underneath the Object Selection tool. And the way this works is this is a smart tool that automatically finds similar pixels, whether that be similar pixels in color or value or some other type of trait. And so it should do a pretty good job of finding the red parts of the apple and then stopping at the white edge. So when you're doing this, you want to start with a large brush size, and these are your options up here. You want to start with the plus with a relatively large brush, and then you want to start painting from the actual center of the apple. Because what's going to happen is, saw very quickly that this selection area went pretty close to the edge of the apple. Now it's not perfect, so I'm going to keep clicking closer to the edge, and I'm going to go to a smaller brush size in a second. But when you're doing this, you really want to make sure that you don't accidentally hover your brush over the edge, so you're clicking both on what you want selected and what you don't want selected, because that is going to confuse Photoshop. So if you select here, you're saying, I want to select the white part and the red part, which you don't want to do. So you need to make sure you keep the brush entirely within the apple. And you might need to make the brush a little bit smaller so it can be a little bit more precise. And when you make the brush smaller, it generally becomes slightly more precise. So I'm just going to get the edges here, and then I got a little too much here. So if I would want to get rid of this, I have to switch from the plus brush to the minus brush. And then I'm just going to click a couple of times, and again, making sure I don't go into the apple, because in this case, I don't want to confuse by going the other way. Because with this one, I'm saying I do not want to select a certain part, and in this case, I do not want to select the shadow or the white. All right, so now I have a decent selection, and the next step is going to be to go to Select and Mask. This is going to open up a separate dialog where we get to see how good or bad this edge is. And this edge is a little bit janky, but that's okay. We can make it a little bit better in this dialog. We have different views here. Maybe you'll see the overlay view. And basically, the different views are just different ways of showing you what is selected and what is not selected. And this one shows you the edge pretty precisely. The overlay or on black is nice because then you can kind of see maybe where the edge should be improved. And to improve the edge, you can use the Quick Select tool, which is the first tool here. And then this will hopefully do a decent job for you of kind of filling in some of these areas that are a little bit maybe not quite as, I'm going to undo that by pressing Command Z, not quite as smooth as you would like them. But I think for me, when I'm at this point, I actually like to use the brush tool. And this is this is a precise tool. It's just going to kind of paint in the area that you want. And this will let you smooth out some of the most jagged areas. Okay, and you want to do this in small strokes because it's hard to control over longer strokes. A little too much. And sometimes you might want to press Command and Z or Control and Z on a PC if you do something you don't mean to do. All right, and so, this is where you need to spend a little bit of time getting the smoothness the way you want it. And then once you have it the way you want it, and I would keep going a little bit more to smooth out the rest of this, but for the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to go ahead and go to the next step. After I get the edge the way I want it, I'm going to choose to smooth this a little bit. And what that is going to do, I'm going to switch to the black and white view. What that does is that just smooths out the edge just a little bit, taking out some of those smaller jaggedy edges. And then I'm going to click OK. That gives me my new selection. And now I'm ready to fill it. So I would need to choose the color, and I'm going to pick a color from the apple. So I picked the forward square. And make sure you pick the square in front because the square in back won't do anything for this. So I'm going to pick a color, and then I am going to make a new layer. And this is really important. You have to fill in the apple using the paint bucket tool on a new layer. So if you fill it in on the apple layer, you're not going to be able to get rid of this shadow here, which I can easily do by simply hiding this layer. And I'll go over that in a minute. So I have that. I have my apple. And again, I use the paint bucket tool, which might be underneath the gradient tool. And now that I have that done, I need to go to select and deselect. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click the eyeball next to layer 2 so I can again see the apple. Go back to my quick select tool, and this time I'm going to select the leaf. But again, I need to make sure that I'm on the plus symbol for the leaf. And then when I click, if nothing happens, I also need to make sure that I'm on the same layer as the pixels that I want to select. So in this case, I'm on layer 2, which is not the apple, right? I need to be on layer 1. And then when I come in and select the leaf, it should hopefully snap. Now this time it did a bad job, so I'm just going to start over. I'm going to press select, deselect, and start in the middle. And this time it did a great job, right? And that's because I think it just got confused when I was clicking on the wrong layer. So that's great. Now I have to get this little part of the leaf here, so I'm going to need to make my brush really small. All right, and that looks good right there. And again, go to select and mask. This time I'm just going to smooth it out some. Click OK. Make another new layer by clicking on the new layer icon in the layer panel, the plus symbol. Then I'm going to go to my paint bucket tool, choose my foreground color as a color in the leaf, and then fill it in. And it's important, again, that you have the leaf, the stem, and the apple fruit all on a different layer. So now I'm going to go ahead and go to select and deselect and hide that. Now sometimes when you're selecting, you might want to zoom in on an area to get it really close, and to do that, you can use your magnifying glass tool and click and drag to the right to zoom in, or click and drag to the left to zoom out. You can also use keyboard shortcuts, Command and plus, Control on a PC, or Command and minus. So I'm going to now select the stem. So again, I have to make sure I go back to my actual apple image to make sure my brush is small enough to be entirely within the stem. And then I'm going to do that, get a pretty good selection, choose select and mask, choose smooth, click OK, make a new layer, choose my paint bucket tool, pick my foreground color, and then paint it in. So now I'm going to go ahead and zoom out. I pressed Command and 0 just to fill the screen, and now I have my apple. But notice that the stem is not going in front, and so the leaf is also not going in front. So I need to change the layer order. In this case, the fruit of the apple is on top of the layer stack, so it is in front of everything. I want it to be behind everything except for the image of the apple. So I'm going to click and drag it so it's below layer 4, and now I have the image the way that I want it. I do actually want to add another layer above the fruit of the apple, and I want to use my paint bucket tool again, and this time I want to just paint in white. So I then have my graphic image of an apple. I'll go ahead and then save this, and this time I'm going to go to File and Save As, and again save on my computer and choose Snowman. And if you don't see the .psd, make sure you write the .psd and your format is Photoshop, and that you are saving it with your other documents for this class so that you know where to find everything. Okay, and that is how you make the graphic image of the apple.